One of the key aspects about progressing through Roblox doors is death. Even the developers recognize this, because as stated in the description of the game, players are meant to use each death as an opportunity to learn about the various threats experienced in the playthrough. Doors at its core is designed to be a trial and error game, where you must eventually overcome each obstacle by being exposed to it multiple times. However, although this is all fine and dandy from a gameplay perspective, what about a storytelling one? After all, it's not like you are actually immortal in terms of the lore, right? Well, believe it or not, but there is actually a ton of evidence supporting that the player character indoors is in fact unable to truly die, and in this video we'll discuss how and why that is. So with all of that being said, let's begin. Alrighty, so the first thing we should tackle is how we know the player can cheat death. After all, it is a pretty bold claim to make, so what are the facts which back it up? Well, first we can look at some of the dialogue from the light characters. Now, for those who don't know, each time you die in Roblox doors, you are met with some dialogue from a light character. These characters will inform you about what you died to and how to better avoid that fate. Now, currently, there are two light characters in the game, and the one we want to focus on currently is Guiding Light. You see, something interesting Guiding Light will do is that they build off previous experiences the player has had with certain threats in order to better aid them. For example, if you happen to die to rush due to being locked out of a closet by hide, Guiding Light will tell you to remember that you don't need to hide immediately. The use of the word remember in this dialogue implies that the player had to have experienced rush in the past and failed, as they would need prior experience with the entity in order to remember that experience in the moment. If the player had truly died the first time back then, they couldn't be around in the current moment to remember those past details. Moving on, the other light character indoors, that being Curious Light, also has dialogue which supports the claim that the player is immortal. You see, each time you die in the room's sublevel, Curious Light will state how they want you to return to finish the job. This obviously wouldn't make sense unless the player is unable to die, as if you truly do die, how are you expected to return unless you aren't actually dead? However, the most obvious piece of evidence which supports that the player is unable to die comes in the form of one of El Goblino's dialogue lines. If you happen to get to room 52 and encounter this entity, they have the chance of stating this. Yeah, they essentially tell you to simply try again if you die, which obviously is very impossible if you are actually dead. So now that we have seen three characters indoors essentially stating how we can't die, I think it is pretty safe to say that the player character is immortal. However, there is still the question of how and why we are, and I think it is time we answer those. Let's start with the question of why we are immortal, and thankfully there's a pretty simple answer to this one. Let me ask you this, when you think of cheating death indoors, what do you think of? I'd say revives, because after all, using one will allow you to continue your playthrough if you do manage to die during it. So, what is so important about revives? Well, once you do use a revive, a quick little animation will play of the revive icon spinning around, and it only takes a few glances to notice that Guiding Light appears in the background of the spinning animation. Now, we know that the light characters are very powerful. After all, they are able to physically affect the hotel around them, and the red unnamed light is even able to influence entities through the use of modifiers. So, seeing how Guiding Light is assumed to be a very powerful being, and how they are directly seen when the player is revived, I think it is safe to say that they are likely the one responsible for making us immortal. However, there is still the question of why Guiding Light is doing this. It is no secret that they are the one who wants us to succeed in our mission to escape the hotel. After all, they do aid us by providing information on how to deal with the threats we encounter. Although, what could they possibly have to gain from this? Well, this is actually part of a much larger question involving the other light characters. That being, what is our purpose of escaping the hotel? You see, in total there are three lights indoors, those being Guiding Light, Curious Light, and a third unnamed red light who hasn't been formally introduced to us yet, but there's loads of evidence supporting their existence. Guiding Light very obviously is rooting for the player, and they try to give us everything to succeed. Curious Light is also rooting for our success, but they seem unwilling to give up too much information on how to accomplish our goals, and although we haven't met the third red light, it is pretty obvious that they are hoping we fail, judging by how they seem responsible for the effects of modifiers. Now, as I had described previously, these light characters are very powerful, and they are able to physically change the hotel. For example, Guiding Light is the one who breaks the lamp in Figure's library cutscene in order to distract him from us. Curious Light is the one who places the levers in the back door to help us avoid haste, and the red light, as described, is directly responsible for the modifiers. However, despite these characters seemingly being all-powerful, they still rely on the player to escape the hotel and other subfloors. In fact, based on what powers we have seen these characters possess, it seems that there really is no point for us players to even be of use to them, as they are far more capable than us of doing anything. Now, going back to the original topic of this video, that being the immortality of the player character, it's very obvious that Guiding Light is keeping us alive, so we have a lot of chances to go through the hotel and the floors which follow it. But the reason for why they want us to do that is still unclear. Now, we know based on some of El Goblino's dialogue that the player character doesn't know how they ended up in the hotel, so it is entirely possible that Guiding Light just wants to help us get out for the sake of being kind. However, this still doesn't explain why Curious Light wants us to complete the rooms, which when you really think about it makes no sense, as you get in and get out without doing anything major. We also don't know why the Red Light would be against us escaping the hotel. My best guess as to why all of this is happening is maybe Guiding Light wants us to uncover the truth of why the hotel is so strange, but that is just an assumption with no real evidence to back it up. I really hate to say this, but the reason why Guiding Light is making us immortal is unknown, and we have to wait for the story to expand in order to find out. Anyways, I know that ending was pretty unsatisfying, as nobody really likes unanswered questions, but there really isn't enough evidence in the game to draw a conclusion to why the player is needed to escape the hotel and other subfloors, which in turn is the reasoning behind their immortality. I'd love to hear all of your thoughts on the matter in the comments, so make sure you drop your theories down there. Anyways, I just wanted to make this video to explain how immortality does in fact exist within doors, as well as what may be causing it. So, with all of that being said, thanks for watching and I hope you enjoyed.